Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Anime Night in the Dojo. Today's featured show, Campfire Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skill, Season 2.
I have Campfire Cooking, Season 2, Episode 10. Welcome back to the dojo. I'm Ryu. It's Age. We're back for more Anime Night in the Dojo, and well, last week Makoto got a bunch of experience by being a gardener. Yeah, I mean, you bring in modern Japanese herbicide to a fantasy world, and you two can take down 12-foot tall killer plants with multiple heads. And then realize that you suddenly somehow hit level 30 for killing a couple plants, and then question everything, and then see that you have the double experience skill, and then, you know, get super pissed off at the gods. So I can't wait to see what he says to them next time he talks to them. So, you know, keep in mind, this was something Vahagen and Hephaestus did on their own. So I assume the girls are going to be not happy with that fact. Or they'll be happy with it on the back end of it, and they'll just be like, hey, don't be mad at us. You know, you should be mad at them, not us. So give us more stuff, but not them. And then they'll just be like, hey, good job with that, you know. we know that Ninrir is the goddess of what do they call that? Hypocrisy. Yeah, that's what it was. But either way, another solid episode. We had the whole Rimuru thing last week. That was hilarious. But going forward, just stuff. Makoto rented a mansion, so I assume they're going to hang out there for one more episode. And we can see it in the episode title, so we know what's happening. There's nothing we can do about it. It's right there. So, you know, it's panning out the way we expected it to. They're going to pit stop here and then go to the sea in the last two episodes. Pretty much what we expected and how the pacing should be going for this, so right. Spoilers, I know. But we all knew that was going to happen, because how the hell do you put a bunch of sea monsters in the OP and the ED and then not go to the ocean by the end of the season? That would be ridiculous. That'd be like, you know, if Rimuru fought Hinata in the OP of Season 1 of Slime, and then he didn't fight her in Season... Oh, did that actually happened? Well, you know, whatever.
I was literally just thinking of that before I even started saying it. The fact that once again, they put the freaking Rimuru versus Hinata fight in Season 1, and Hinata doesn't even get introduced until Season 2.
Yep. But I digress. I'm ready for the madness.
No, she's one of the last things that happens in Season 1 is her attempt to assassinate Rimuru.
Yeah. So, either way, that being said, I'm ready for the madness, so let's push some buttons and get going here. So people on Patreon will see you on the other side of the edit for the timer reaction, and people on YouTube on the other side for the discussion and review. And if you're looking for either and or both, they're in the respective places, and you guys know how to click links. So find what you're looking for and click those buttons. So here goes some. Well, alrighty then, there you guys have it. Another episode in the books. We got to talk a little bit about food and stuff like that, what were going on during this episode, like okra and personal preferences and stuff like that. So that's always fun. You know, we talked about it during the reaction a little bit. It's kind of one of those things that's kind of interesting, where there's certain food types that you look at them and go, like, you either like it or you don't, and that's like a very broad thing. It's like, well, yeah, you could say that about anything, but with certain things, like I made the reference, like for me personally, you look at something like a tomato. I can't just like take a slice of tomato and eat it, because then I'll just be like, I can't do it. It's like it's gross to me. I don't think tomato is bad food. I have it in all kinds of other stuff. You throw some salsa in front of me, no problem. I could, you know, shoot that like a shot of, you know, Crown Royal or something, no problem. No chips or anything. But if it was just like a tomato or something, can't do it. Like I said, if somebody handed me like a ham sandwich with just a tomato on it or something, couldn't do it. It wouldn't be enough. If it's in salsa, burrito, hamburger, whatever, no problem. You know, it's part of the greater whole. It's great. But there are certain things like, you know, like okra, stuff like that. Rosemary is another like big thing with stuff like that. I know they put rosemary in a lot of stuff these days as like a preserving agent, and like people like my mom especially can't stand rosemary, and it's kind of one of those things where if you know it's an ingredient in something you eat, you can't cope with it. You know what I mean? It's like that weird mental block. It's like, I know it's in there, even if I can't taste it. You know what I mean? So it can't do it. So it's just kind of like an interesting thing to think about is like, where's the line for a lot of people with this kind of thing? And it's not a bad thing. You don't have to like anything. Like if you don't like avocado or you don't like coconuts or you don't like whatever, you know what I mean? You don't have to like it.
Yeah, avocado and sour cream are my two big things for me, where like, doesn't matter what you mix it into, how you try to hide it, I will immediately notice that it's in there.
Yep.
And avocado, I'm like borderline throwing up immediately. And sour cream used to be that bad, but I have managed to slowly build up a tolerance for it over the years.
Right. Like sour cream's used in a lot of baking products, like say muffins. You're not going to really notice it for that kind of thing, generally speaking. But in like something like this, like say this dish Makoto did, if like he threw sour cream in like this kind of dish that's not like a baked good, you're probably going to notice it more than say like in a muffin or something, because it's like a binding agent and stuff like that in baking. Either way, just more classic cooking related shenanigans, that kind of thing. They completed some quests. They had that really creepy used car salesman guy right here. Fairly classic character. Gotta appreciate that. Them being in the pottery town, they had some fairly unique pottery and stuff like that. That was cool. They had that like cup with the like temperature control. That's pretty neat. Like I don't have it on me, but I'm sure you guys know like those thermos things that you can buy, the tumblers or whatever they're called, that are like very thermodynamic to the point where it's like they do good with cold stuff and hot stuff, and then you just use that as just everything.
They're insulated.
Yeah, they're insulated.
Yeah, the cup that he got though specifically it had magic stone dust embedded in it that made it to where it just constantly cooled whatever was in it.
Yep. So it's kind of like you said, you put a beer in there and it's not going to fluctuate at all. It's like you pour it in there, and if it was like 40 degrees, it's going to be 40 degrees the whole time. You know what I mean? It's not going to be affected by the ambient temperature of a room. Like, say you pour some hot tea and then go into a room that's like 50 degrees. In like 5 minutes, your like 110 degree tea is going to be like 80 degrees. You know what I mean? If you don't drink it fast enough. That kind of thing. So that's what that cup would be counteracting. It's like it's going to keep it at its temperature. That kind of for a cold beverage. So that kind of thing is pretty neat. But either way, the other like major thing was Sui being able to now be this and change their voice, which does track. Though this voice that Sui had when they were giant was a little grating for me personally. It was just like kind of like, but that's a very minor thing.
Yeah,
they kind of like, when anything like becomes giant or bigger, they kind of keep the same voice and then they put that like gigantification effect on the voice. I think they kind of just like did that to Sui's just normal voice, and it didn't come out well, in my opinion. You know what I mean? In certain cases where like you get certain things like, say like Nell from Bleach, like when she's a little kid, that voice of hers makes sense, and then when she returns to her adult form, it's like her having that same voice there is kind of weird. You know what I mean? You kind of just like look at it and go, that's kind of a weird voice for that character when they're an adult or whatever. And in this case for Sui, it's just like they added that like gigantification effect to it, and it just came out kind of like flat and weird.
Yeah.
Again, not really a big downside to the show. Obviously, it was just kind of like just kind of awkward a little bit. But when you take like a little kid voice and like gigantify it, it's probably always going to have that like weird effect. You guys know that, like, not that I'm really into social media or anything like that personally, but I know a lot of people use like that got popular for a while there. I don't know if it's still popular, but a while back there was that like filter on Instagram or Facebook or wherever it was that it would take a person's like look, and then the filter would be like, it would turn them into a baby. You know what I mean? It would like babyfy them, that kind of thing. So That's just kind of like the vibe this kind of had, where it was just like it was a bad filter. But either way, they're still understandable, and that's the only thing that really matters. Do you understand what Sui said? Yeah? Okay. So be it. But now Sui is continuing to prove that they are a incredibly unique and interesting slime. But again, as Makoto pointed out, it probably has a lot to do with the fact that they're consuming all like the otherworldly plastic and just what we learned originally when Sui consumes like otherworldly things as like being what a slime is, just being able to deconstruct anything and be like the trash can, basically. All the otherworldly stuff was adding to their level. You know what I mean? And probably increasing their rarity, that kind of thing, their uniqueness, because slimes take on the aspects of the things they take in. So while they weren't going to turn into like a plastic slime because they're, you know, eating a bunch of plastic containers or whatever, it's probably just adding to their just what equates to like their base stats, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the whole thing with like the otherworldly food is that all of the old otherworldly stuff in this, when transferred over to this world, is like supercharged. That's why like the heroes are stronger than the normal people. The otherworldly food boosts your stats when you eat it. In the case of Sui being a slime, like I mentioned, like slime's main driving factor is their stomach.
Yep.
Because they don't actually have a stomach; they are a stomach.
Right.
Their entire body is just designed to eat anything.
Right. So either way, this was pretty interesting. We had the stuff with you know, just atypical quest, you know, that with just the average, or not the average, but just like the what could happen when a town is like understaffed. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if this party here, this C rank party, had to go take on those orcs, there's no way. You know what I mean? They handled the stragglers reasonably okay, but there's, like they said, they were trying to get like 6 or 7 full teams, and there was like 200 something orcs. So 6 or 7 full teams like this probably would have struggled with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then you would have been talking about like, say, 50 on 200. So that probably would have been kind of a struggle if the orcs got a little coordinated and then weren't just like thrown into disarray. There weren't really stragglers with these orcs here. More or less just collateral ragdoll damage. You know what I mean? This was collateral damage ragdolls right here, were these guys that they just got thrown by the big attacks that the 3 familiars were doing and just ended up over here. So gotta appreciate that kind of polarity. But either way, the other thing that is to mention about this kind of whole situation is a lot of people are like, oh, if you're bigger, you're slower, right? No. In the case of Sui here, especially for a slime and what they consist of, they probably have a lot less friction when it comes to movement. You know what I mean? So they're, while they're not like moving in the traditional sense, if they were like in that skit at the end there where Sui was like hopping, which is bad for their passengers, so that's obviously why they weren't doing it, because once again, at that size, you can see how small the grown-ass men are on their back. You know what I mean? So Sui, if those guys are like 6 feet tall, if you just look at this shot right here, you know, they're like half a story tall, something there. Sui's a solid 15 stories tall there at that point. You know what I mean? So anything that big hopping around is going to be roller coaster levels plus of G-force. You know what I mean? So in Sui's case here, just staying on the ground is going to be the least problematic for like G-force level stuff. But yeah, that last skit there, just kind of like, yeah, if something Sui size is hopping around, that's going to cause some serious problems.
Yeah, no, it's just a very common misconception in like games and shows and all that kind of stuff. And just entertainment media in general is making like depictions of like titans or giants or whatever really slow moving when it's actually the exact opposite, because
stride length matters.
The amount of movement you're doing is proportional to your size. Friggin', you could be sprinting full speed as the size of a human, and a giant like 8 times your size will be going faster than you just by walking.
Right. Stride length matters, just in general, as a proportional thing as well. To like, the longer your strides, the less effort you have to exude on your general stamina. You know what I mean? So if you're moving like this, that's exuding way more stamina than if you're doing this and you're moving the same distance. You know what I mean? So that's always kind of like an interesting thing to talk about, is just one of those things where it's just like, if you're giant, to be slow, you'd have to be doing like this. You know what I mean? Just taking like super hyper baby steps.
Well, what most like games and stuff typically do is they just make them move extremely slow. So like they're taking the long strides, but they're making them take like 10 times longer to make one stride than normal.
Right. For anybody who played World of Warcraft, do you guys remember the giant Thaddeus-esque monster in that outdoor zone in Wrath of the Lich King? Same thing. They made that guy move like this, basically. It was just like, his feet would move like this, just down. And then down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like literally moving in slow motion. That's basically what it was. And just because you're big doesn't mean you move in slow motion. You're going to move the same way. You know what I mean? If all of a sudden you get hit by like a growth ray and you're 30 feet tall, your body's not going to move in slow motion. You're going to move the same way you did as when you were 6 feet tall.
The only thing that would actually be slowing you down for being bigger is just that you'd be more impacted by gravity.
Yeah. So,
but it's not going to be that big of a difference.
Right. So, either way, that's just like one of those things that you can always like think about. It's like just kind of like a weird thing. But yeah, I mean, another successful quest, more random bits of just otherworldly cooking and whatnot. You got to appreciate the comedy of piling the orcs past the chandelier kind of thing. That's always funny, which at the end of the day, it's that's like 7 or 8 of the 200 orcs. But you know, you always got to appreciate the comedic effect of stuff like this. So either way, another solid episode for what it was. We did a salt bake. That's kind of new and exciting for stuff like that. Different style of cooking. It comes out exactly like Makoto did. You know what I mean? And for what he did with the lettuce, for anybody wondering, that lessens the effect of salt on it. Obviously, it's like an extra layer of protection. That's why he did it, so that it wouldn't get too salty and have it be like, oh, would you like some meat with your salt?
Yeah, it keeps the salt from directly contacting the meat.
Right. And this is something we also talked about during the reaction too, was like how Makoto has treated Sui throughout this whole series is exactly how most people should treat their children when they become interested in anything like cooking. You know what I mean? As Makoto has done more cooking, that's something that has been going on in like the background of stuff, of like the montage skits of him cooking, is Sui continuing to help him, because Sui has always been interested in what's going on with this. And that's how you nurture a child, is you know, push their interest and then have them help you do this thing. You know, like when he was making the gyoza, even though Sui messed it up on the first try, it's like, yeah, don't worry about it. This is how we fix it. And you teach and learn that way. A masterclass in being a parent. It's not that hard, you guys. Have your kids have stuff like this be second nature to them, so that they don't see cooking as a chore, and then boom, no problem. I know plenty of people who hate cooking. And it's just like, listen, if it becomes second nature and it's not a big deal, then you don't really see it as a chore. It's just like, yeah, I just did it. Whatever. You know? Don't worry about it. You know? Just make it kind of fun, stuff like this, and then no big deal. But in this series, just in general, how he's treated Sui, yeah, he's spoiled Sui, and, you know, like Bell points out, it's like, oh, you treat Sui so much better. It's like, well, yeah, you know, it's one of those things. But while he does spoil Sui in certain ways, he still is a nurturing and teaching parental figure. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
he encourages Sui to learn new things and just like, hey, you can do it. You know what I mean? Or can you make something like this? Just try. It's not a big deal if it doesn't come out perfect. You know what I mean? But Sui, being a prodigy for the reasons we talked about earlier, just Mithril Knife plus, Mithril Sword plus, Mithril Meat Grinder plus, you know, all the other things that Sui has made have come out great. You know what I mean? So
Sui even created the nozzle.
I know, the nozzle. So either way, another great episode for what it was, and we'll be heading to the sea next episode, that kind of thing. I am kind of surprised with all these sweets and stuff like that we didn't get angry Ninrir in the background, just angry Ninrir noises, but you know, the gods got to take a break this week, so there you have it. I assume we'll get them one more time, or in the last two episodes here, that we'll probably see them at least one more time, that kind of thing. But I'm looking forward to the ocean shenanigans. That should be fun. Yeah, another solid episode. Some lovely, lovely desserts. So that's all I got for this one for this week. It's doing everything it needs to do. Something I will say about the show, and I was thinking about, I think the soundtrack in this is kind of underrated. It's a very good soundtrack for what it is. So, we like to bring up the sound design and soundtrack from time to time, and this show has its like iconic like montage soundtrack that it does, but it's not afraid to like throw in different stuff. You know what I mean? Which is a good thing to do. But you always want to keep like your classic background track. They keep doing that too. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I typically tend not to really notice the music in this, but generally speaking, that's usually what you want out of a background track, is for people to not notice it.
Right.
It's supposed to just set the tone.
Yep. But like I've gone out of my way to like, is this the same track? And yeah, it's like this show's track. It's kind of like, you know, like it's Dante's theme from Devil May Cry, that kind of thing. Like our background track is Rainy Day at the Cafe from Persona 5, just remixed by DJ Cutman. But yeah, it's just one of those things. But either way, another solid episode. Looking forward to the last two, however they wrap up this season. So, ladies and gentlemen, people of YouTube beyond, however you're watching, as always, we appreciate you stopping by and hanging out here in the dojo for more anime night in the dojo. This was Campfire Cooking, Season 2, Episode 10. So, have a good morning, evening, afternoon. Whatever it is for you, have a good one. See you next time.
Hey everyone, Victoria here. If you enjoyed the video, please consider pushing those like and subscribe buttons. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thanks again for your time, and we hope to see you again in the future.